Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So for today we are talking about a few of the more notable cards that I've seen trending on the market recently. Now we just wrapped up YCS Anaheim, but we do have YCS Pittsburgh happening at the beginning of November in what is basically going to be the exact same format, since there's probably no new ban list and no new products released before then. The interesting thing is that the main decks aren't actually causing too much market movement. Yummy, Draco Tail, and Mitsurugi cards have all pretty much stabilized in price. That said, what we are noticing instead is a lot of trends that are related to tech options, rogue strategies, and of course, Genesis format. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Dragoonity Remus. So the Dragoonity deck is quite an old strategy. They're one of the original synchro climbing decks that aims to bring out powerful synchro monsters. In recent years, the cards haven't been particularly relevant. However, we have seen some cards get used across various strategies. I think that technically Dragon's Ravine is part of the Dragoonity theme, and we've seen cards like Dragoonity Divine Lance see usage in decks like Dragon Link before as well. Now, Remus is a fairly new card that came out well after most of the other Dragoonity cards, and it was a huge boost for the deck. You can discard this card to search for Dragon Ravine, who then accesses other dragon monsters, and you can also special summon this card from your hand for free if you do control a Dragoonity monster as well. So right now, we are seeing Remus trending on the market because we just had some new Dragoonity support revealed. There were 4 new cards shown, and they're coming to the OCG in a set called Terminal World 3, and it's very likely that those cards will be imported to the TCG in next year's Battles of Legends set. Now, the new cards are actually really good. I think the Link 4 literally cheats any Dragoonity monster you want out of the extra deck for free, but of course, the cards haven't been officially released in the OCG yet, so we are going to have to wait a little bit longer before we can see how the cards actually perform at a competitive level. Now, price-wise, of course, Remus has done nothing but go up ever since the support was revealed. This has historically been a pretty cheap card. When it first came out, everyone thought that searching Dragon's Ravine was just like this absolutely crazy thing to do. So we were seeing Remus initially at about $10, but after seeing virtually zero play over the last couple of years, this has settled down to about the $2 mark each. Now, however, with the new support, of course the card has jumped in price, reaching a high of about $10 to $12, but now seeming to settle at about $7 to $8 per copy. Now with this one, it feels really obvious that this should be a sell. We have to look at last year's Battles of Legends set, Monster Mayhem, and make note of how they reprinted basically all of the relevant cards for all of the Terminal World archetypes like Jurak and Gem Knights. At the same time, I don't really see Dragoonity being super meta relevant in 2026. They're probably more of just like a rogue strategy, maybe tier 2 if they happen to get a 5th piece of support that ends up being crazy broken. But yeah, between the high chance of a reprint when the support comes and the deck probably not being too meta relevant, I would definitely look to move this card now while it is seeing a bunch of hype. Next up, we have Flying Sea. So this is one that caught me completely off guard seeing its current price. Flying Sea is of course related to Max Sea being an insect hand trap. Now with this one, when your opponent summons a monster, you special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field, and then the controller of this card cannot exceed summon. So this card might be really strange to read depending on when you started playing the game. Now in today's game, this card is obviously horrible since you could just link it off into something generic like an SP Little Knight. However, this card came out before links were a thing, and this was a really devastating card to drop against the Burning Abyss deck since it basically stopped them from playing altogether. Now naturally, what allows this card to be relevant again in 2025 is Genesis format. This card is basically never going to see modern play again as long as links are a thing, but in a format where you can't link things off, Flying Sea can be very disruptive. It is going to depend heavily on what deck you're playing against, since obviously you can still use it as a synchro or fusion material, but depending on how Genesis format shapes up and what decks prove to be strong, this could be a very useful side deck option. Alright, now this is the thing that's absolutely crazy to me. This card's price. Flying Sea does have several common printings, those are all not really that relevant. Its only holo printing came as an ultra rare in the Judgment of the Light Deluxe Edition, which was basically this elite trainer box type thing that you could buy that had some packs and sleeves in it. So I think most people assumed that this card would never be good ever again, so everyone's just been dumping them. This card was literally at most $1 or so for the last few years. However, with Genesis format, this card has climbed like crazy. The cheapest ones currently available on TCG Player are about $12 per copy, and there are actually tons of copies that have moved at or around the $10 mark. Now, moving forward, I think this is another card you will definitely want to sell. I don't know how likely it is that Konami will reprint something like this. I think they have given it an OTS common reprint recently, but they probably don't give it another holo reprint slot unless Konami decided to reprint an entire set that's just dedicated to Genesis format stuff. And then even in Genesis format, I haven't played a ton of it. I don't know how likely it is that Flying Sea will actually see that much play or how great it will actually be. I do see a lot of decks using things like Super Poly and Dark Hole, things that can still out Flying Sea, so maybe this card is easier to out than it was for decks in the past. But yeah, at $12, this is absolutely 100% a sell. Play with the commons if you really want to, but this is a tech I'm not really that convinced by, and it's at way too high of a price point to justify keeping. On to the next one, we have Totem Bird. Now this is a pretty odd rank 3 Xyz monster. The thing I remember most about this card is pulling this instead of Dracosac, which was really devastating when they were both coming out since they're both wind Xyz monsters, but back then Dracosac was over $100 and this was like a dollar card. Anyways, Totem Bird is a rank 3 Xyz that requires 2 level 3 wind monsters to make, and it's simply a spell or trap negate during either player's turn by detaching 2 materials. Now, over the years, this card has seen play occasionally, most notably back in Zodiac format, where you would make this card with Terrortop and Taketomborg if you already had access to a Zodiac monster, and as the game has evolved, the ability to negate things has only gotten more and more important. Now, most recently, this card has gotten a bit of attention because of the Radiant Typhoon theme. Now, this is the archetype revolving around Mystical Space Typhoon, and the deck contains multiple level 3 wind monsters, so it's only natural that Totem Bird is an extra deck option that they have considered. Now, believe it or not, this deck is actually viable in both Modern and Genesis format. In Modern, they are getting a new Link monster in Burst Protocol that helps the deck out a lot, and in Genesis format, they've done pretty well when combined with the Runic cards to help break through boards and consistently disrupt the opponent. Now, Totem Bird is something that doesn't have too many printings, however it did get a rare reprint in Legendary Duelist Synchro Storm. That's the set that Baron de Fleur came in, and it was a rare back then, so the card is very easily accessible and pretty cheap if you just want a single copy to play with. However, the card was originally a secret rare in Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy, and then it got another secret rare reprint in the Tins, and those are the only holo printings that the card has available. This historically hasn't been too expensive of a card, only a few dollars, but over the last month or so, we've seen both of the secret rare printings jump up in price, now settling at around $10 for either version. Now, unfortunately, I do have Totem Bird here as another card to sell. It doesn't seem that likely to get a reprint, or at least if it did, it would be pretty unnecessary. I could maybe see it getting something like an OTS Tournament Pack Super or something like that. In terms of how meta it is, like, Totem Bird will be a good card for Radiant Typhoon. I just don't know how viable the deck will really be in Modern format, even with the new support. And then obviously in Genesis format, the points can fluctuate, and the deck already had a top at YCS Anaheim, so it could be very easily adjusted back down. But yeah, given the hype that the card is seeing right now, this is another one of those cards where I think it makes a lot more sense to just sell the high rarity printing while it is seeing a bunch of hype, play with the lower rarity printing for now, and then buy back the max rarity version in the future once the price has settled back down. Alright, we next have Gravekeeper's Inscription. Now this is a normal spell card that's been very hit or miss. It sees play every now and then, but it's never really consistently been an amazing side deck card. Now the main drawback is that it has to be activated at the start of your main phase 1, so if you draw into it later in the turn, you cannot use it. However, it can be very powerful. It lets you either stop both players from activating card effects in the graveyard, banishing cards from the graveyard, or special summoning from the graveyard, and that lasts until the end of your opponent's next turn. Now, unfortunately, it is only one of those effects that you get, but depending on the format, this card can completely shut down certain strategies. Now, at the moment, it's this card's ability to prevent special summoning from the graveyard that makes the card so broken. Yummy is of course a big one. Inscription stops them from using their synchros to tag out into bodies out of the graveyard, which basically cuts off a lot of their ability to play on your turn. But then against Mitsurugi variants as well, this card stops the rituals from coming back after they're tributed, and it also completely shuts down Futsu as well. The main thing that we have to keep in mind though is that this card does shut down both players, so be careful what deck you are using the card in, but the card can single-handedly win you some games if you are able to make use of it. Now, the card originally came to the TCG as a secret rare back in Photon Hypernova, and then it got a reprint in the 2024 tins. After the reprint, this card's price has just been all over the place. Sometimes it sees play and it goes up to like $10 to $12 each, and then it just drops off and doesn't see any success for like a couple of months. The card has gotten some attention again recently, however, especially with the popularization of Mitsurugi Yummy. So we've seen the card go from $3 a few months ago to now being around $7 per copy. With Inscription, it really does feel like the card should get a reprint, though we haven't had any sort of holiday reprint set announced, which is kind of surprising. Maybe it is something that they'll reprint early on in 2026. And in terms of meta relevance, like the card probably is medium to high. The card is going to see play and it's gonna win games for some people. It's just something I personally can't really get behind. I really don't like the way that the card works. Maybe it's better now because games go on for a little bit longer and it's not so bad in Draco Tail, because you could just draw it with the Draco Tail traps. I would just hate to draw into a card like this in the middle of my turn and be like, oh yeah, this card's dead, it doesn't do anything. But yeah, that said, I think it's fine if you want to hold onto a playset just in case it's something you decide to use in the future, but it's probably better to move off of your extra copies just in case it does see a reprint early next year. And finally, the last card we're taking a look at for today is Armades Keeper of Boundaries. So the card is a generic level 5 synchro monster, and its effect isn't really relevant at all. It does stop your opponent from doing anything when this card attacks or is attacked. I don't remember exactly. I think people tried to make this card to run over Fire and Ice Hand back in early hat format. However, the card is, of course, trending because it's a generic Light Fiend synchro, and so we're seeing the card moving right now because it's a bridge for synchro decks to get into the Fiendsmith engine. Now, Yummy has obviously been something that's more popular with Mitsurugi recently, but Fiendsmith Yummy is something that people have been talking about ever since the deck first came out. So technically the deck doesn't mind losing Moon of the Closed Heaven as much as other decks, since they have a different bridge piece that they can climb into using Martial Metal Marcher and any of the Yummy synchros. Unfortunately, Armades has very limited availability. This card hasn't been too useful in past years, but it's a very nice looking card. The card has two secret rare printings, one from Judgment of the Light and another from the tins from that year. It does actually have another gold rare reprint as well, though that one does look really, really ugly. The original secrets that we're seeing here, these were around $3 a piece, but we've seen a huge spike with them recently. The cheapest ones on TCG Player right now are $15 to $17 for a near mint copy, though obviously the graph here hasn't updated yet. And then after that, we have the tin secrets and gold rares at basically the same price. Either version of the card is going to cost you around $10 at the moment, despite the card only being $1 or $2 before. Now with Armades, I feel like this one is absolutely something that you just sell into the hype. I think the only way that we see this card really start to see a lot of meta play is if they eventually hit Mitsurugi, maybe like Prayers Limited and another hit, and then players are forced to play Fiendsmith Yummy instead, and that just becomes the next best variant. However, with the attention that Armades has gotten over the last month or so, and the fact that the next ban list is probably a few months away as well, I think it's inevitable that we see Armades get reprinted within the next couple of reprint sets. Even then, I don't see this as being a meta-relevant tech card over the next couple of months. The Fiendsmith Yummy deck just seems so much worse than the Mitsurugi variant. But yeah, if you are able to move your copies of Armades, I think this is absolutely something you should get rid of before the price comes crashing back down to normal. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Unfortunately, this is the only market watch I'm going to be posting this week because I am in the middle of exam season. Hopefully I'll be able to bring you guys some more stuff within the next couple of weeks, but I will also be seeing a bunch of you at YCS Pittsburgh. It's going to be my first time in Pittsburgh. If you guys have any recommendations for stuff to do or go see, please make sure that you let me know. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.